Okay, so I'd like to make it known before I say anything. I actually loved Venom. Don't get me wrong, it was an objectively horrible movie, but the goofy 90s tone it had was so good and funny that it overtook any problems I had with the film. But what you're going to be watching here today is my version of Venom. What would I make if I was given a big budget by a studio to make a standalone Venom film without Spider-Man? I'm not including Spider-Man because the original didn't either, and I plan on staying true to that, and it would make it completely unfair because if Spider-Man was in this, everyone would be like, oh, this one's so much better than the old one because it has Spider-Man. No, we're gonna be fair about this. This one will not have Spider-Man. I just want to show that it is 100% possible to make Venom good without Spider-Man because everyone said when the first Venom movie came out that it was impossible to do Venom that good without Spider-Man, and I'm gonna prove you wrong. I'm gonna prove you wrong. The film kicks off with a young blonde child fighting with his father inside of his house. He runs outside to play soccer alone in his front yard to get his mind off of stuff, trying to have fun, alone. The child's ball accidentally rolls into the street and the boy chases after it, causing him to get hit by an oncoming van. Cut to the point of view of the child, who is screaming for help as he sees the driver's side door begin to open, but his eyes close as he fades away. Cut to present day. A black goop is slowly crawling out of a forest outside of New York. It explores the forest, interacting with creatures and even taking over some of them, rejecting all of them as hosts. The goop, which we will now call the symbiote, is about to take over a small squirrel when a bunch of Oscorp scientists suddenly capture it, giving it a little bit of a jump scare, and us. The goop makes a shriveling screech noise as they pack it up and drive away. Cut to Eddie Brock in a shit apartment in downtown San Francisco. We pan by a wall full of newspaper clippings, all of Eddie's greatest photos from the Daily Bugle. When we get to the end of the clippings, we see that the last one is a retraction. He works at a run-of-the-mill grocery store, flirts with the girl who cashiers next to him, whose name is Anne, might I add. He goes home, watches sports, sleeps, then repeats the same thing the next day. We come to notice Eddie has a bum leg as well. Things have been boring and honestly horrible for Eddie, and he has a lot of hate in his heart. Hate for himself, his situation, pretty much everything. He's a good guy, but just has a bad temper and attitude. No idea why until he gets a phone call from his father. We are never gonna see what Eddie's father looks like in this film. Eddie never gets to see his father, so we won't either. We are Eddie in this story. Eddie's father chews him out for his current state of living, pretty much telling him that he's a disappointment and needs to get his shit together. That his mother, if she were still here, would be disappointed in the failure he's become. I'm not sure of the exact dialogue, but we will learn through this phone call that Eddie's father used to be a very wealthy man. That is until Eddie was in a bad accident, and as a child, he had to pay for all of it, being that his mother was not there, which resulted in Eddie's bad leg. This all ends with him telling Eddie he pulled a few strings with some old colleagues and he got Eddie an interview at Oscorp Industries, and not to mess it up. Eddie keeps trying to tell his father that he isn't a science guy, he's a reporter. He takes down bad people with the power of journalism. His father immediately shoots this down, telling him that it didn't work out before and he has to move on to something else. His dream is trash. You see, Eddie's just been looking for his big break. He's sent all of his work to all the newspaper publishers in San Francisco, but that also means he's required to send what got him fired and kicked out of New York in the first place. Apparently, Eddie lied about a murder, getting the wrong man sent to jail. The man was still a bad person, and Eddie saw the murder he was investigating as a way to put this man away. But when it came out that Eddie sent the wrong man to do life in prison, the state of New York was not happy about it. So Eddie ends up going to this interview, where he sits down with Alistair Smythe. The interview really isn't going very well, given that Eddie isn't very qualified to work there. This is obvious to both Alistair and Eddie, causing Eddie to become a little aggravated and just not giving a fuck about the whole thing. At the other end of Oscorp, a team of scientists in hazmat suits rolling a cart with a drape over it approach the one and only Norman Osborn, who I would love to be played by Bryan Cranston if that were at all possible. Norman is visiting the San Francisco division of Oscorp to see their new arrival from the New York City division made it accordingly. The scientists say that yes, it did arrive just fine, and they pull the drape off the cart, revealing the symbiote. Norman studies it in awe. He gushes about how long they've been trying to get their hands on this. Earth's first ever alien life form. They've been chasing it for months. He asks the scientists if its friend followed them. They say no signs of anyone following them was reported, and Norman's very pleased with this. He commands them to take it to the lab to be tested on. As they take it away, Norman smiles and he calls someone. He tells the person on the other line that they have it, and to call the Department of Defense. Within a few days, they'll be ready to make their pitch. Back in the interview, things are going really awkward. Eddie has pretty much given up on the idea of ever working here, and their conversation awkwardly ends. Eddie sees himself out when he walks past a door that is swung open by a scientist, where he sees none other than the symbiote, and he's appalled by this. What the hell is that black goop? It looked like they were setting it on fire. He hears it scream as they blast sound waves at it. Are they torturing it? As Eddie thinks of all this, he realizes that this is it. This is his big break. If he can get some pictures to sell to one of the papers out here, he could finally make it back into the industry. The scientists continue to torture the symbiote as it screams in agony. Eddie quietly opens the door and begins taking pictures and video. Once Eddie gets the photos he needs, he begins to walk away but stops when he hears the symbiote scream once again. He feels for it. He wants to help it. He remembers himself as a young boy screaming for help as his dad would hit him with a belt, alone. He has to do something. Whatever this thing is, it's living and it needs help. Eddie waits for the scientist to walk off somewhere else and rushes in to release the symbiote from its holding container. He manages to break it open using the fire extinguisher and is attacked by the symbiote. It lunges onto him and covers his body. Eddie falls to the floor. Seconds later, getting back up, the symbiote is nowhere to be seen. One of the scientists runs back into the room, hearing the commotion. Once they see Eddie, they freak out and call the others. Eddie hears a voice that just says, "Evil man." And Eddie suddenly extends his arm, now covered in black goo, and wraps it around the man's neck, snapping it. This scene will play out pretty much the same as the apartment scene, but with the Oscorp security. Norman is quickly made aware of what's happening and sends all of Oscorp security units after Eddie. The voice in Eddie's head says, "What's your name?" Eddie responds, also asking who the hell is inside of his head.
"It's us, Eddie. You saved us, and now we are going to save you. But we need to leave now."
Eddie no longer has control over his body. He fights through some more security as he makes it to his motorcycle. From here, the scene plays out pretty much as it did in the original Venom movie, but when we get to this point...
That is a dead end!
Not for us!
Instead of staying on the bike, Eddie gets flung off of the bike and in midair in this amazing pose right here. The symbiote fully takes over, and Eddie and the symbiote become Venom. From here, the chase scene plays out much different, because now it's going to be a full-on swing sequence meshed with Venom taking out Oscorp security below. Venom's going to tear through them like it's nothing. He'll literally go to eat the last person when Eddie stops him, telling him that they're bad people, but they don't have a choice. It's their job. They can't just eat people. They have a funny little back and forth about how the symbiote really, really wants to, and Eddie says he's not allowed to, but the symbiote actually just eats him anyways. Eddie gets mad, and the symbiote tells him that it was the man or Eddie's liver. Back at Oscorp, Osborn is freaking out about what just happened. He yells for someone to get him Gargan. Moments later, head of Oscorp security Mac Gargan enters the room. Osborn tells him that he is now in charge of finding their alien and bringing it back here. He takes the assignment but asks how on earth he's supposed to find and capture that thing. Osborn tells him that ever since they began watching this creature, they developed a failsafe of sorts. He brings Gargan to a room where they're storing an armored suit, the Scorpion suit, with a tail that can emit sound waves, flames, and pretty much whatever he needs to take down the alien. It also protects Gargan and enhances his natural speed and strength. Gargan smiles at the opportunity and takes the offer. We cut to a scene pretty much the exact same as the one from the original film where Symbiote and Eddie talk to each other after the chase scene, except instead of talking about Carlton Drake's rocket, he talks about how they are one now. They're a team. Eddie and him are a perfect bond, and he hasn't had a perfect bond in a long time. And his last perfect bond was a bit of a Boy Scout, so their ideologies didn't really match up. But him and Eddie seem to get each other to a certain degree. Eddie cuts in making a joke about how the symbiote literally ate someone. Eddie asks how the symbiote even got to Earth, and he says that he was exiled from his planet for being rash and quick to anger. It was then that the Boy Scout found him, and he began to make his journey on Earth. Eddie asks who this Boy Scout is, and the symbiote simply dismisses him, saying it's a story for another time. The symbiote tells him his knowledge of the bad man's failsafe he talked about. They're gonna come after him and Eddie, and if they're gonna survive, they need to do it together. Eddie asks who this bad man is, and the symbiote tells him that he remembers someone calling him Osborn. Eddie freaks out. Norman Osborn? The man who sells incredibly high-tech killing machines to the government? Symbiote tells him to stick with him, and they will survive. They have to worry about themselves, and only themselves. Matt Gargan returns home to his mother, who he still lives with. We basically are going to set up how Matt Gargan is going to be kind of a parallel to Eddie. Like, what if Eddie had one more bad day? How cynical of a guy would he become? How much more would he hate everything? We want to feel for Mac, and his mother hates him. He's been ignored by everyone his whole life, and he feels alone, but is incredibly excited about this new mission. Someone finally saw him for his potential, and he basically convinces himself that if he fails this mission, he's truly a failure and worth nothing. Cut to Eddie's everyday life again, except now it's with the symbiote. Eddie teaches the symbiote that from now on they're gonna eat normal food, not humans. The symbiote even pushes Eddie to ask out Anne from work. These two creatures, Eddie and the symbiote, have pretty much completed each other. Both have felt alone and hurt their entire lives, but together they aren't alone. There's only one problem. The symbiote continually shows little to no respect for any other human besides Eddie. It honestly couldn't care less about anyone else on this planet, and it keeps saying that they just need to take care of themselves. It's when they're out to eat that Scorpion first attacks, taking them by surprise. The fight is crazy, and Venom gets his ass beat a little bit. Things get really serious when people begin to be put in danger. Eddie wants to save them, and the symbiote wants to cover their ass. This seems to cause them pretty much to lose the fight. But they manage to get away by damaging Scorpion's visor. Eddie mentions that the more people they publicly save, the more press they're gonna get, which Eddie can use to get his big break again when he sets up a camera to take pictures of the fight. Little reference to something that's been done before by another hero. From here on out, the symbiote and Eddie are fighting. The symbiote is pissed at Eddie for trying to save someone else over themselves, and Eddie is mad at the symbiote for not caring for other human life at all. And back over at Oscorp, Scorpion returns saying that he got what Osborn wanted, as he presents a small vial of the symbiote he cut off of Venom in the fight. Osborn smiles and takes the vial, telling him he did a good job. This pleases Gargan exponentially. No one has ever told him that before. Norman and the Oscorp scientists upgrade the Scorpion suit, infusing it with the symbiote. One thing leads to another, and the symbiote retaliates, attempting to eat away at the suit and kill Gargan, but Gargan imposes his will over the symbiote and corrupts it, becoming a venomized scorpion and utterly insane. He rushes over to the nearby scientists and completely devours them. He looks at Norman, who seems actually really proud of what just happened. He rushes over to him, as if he were about to eat him, but Norman commands him not to do this, for he is his child. He tells Gargan that he knows what to do. Gargan follows his orders? He exits, looking for Venom. Norman just sits and smiles. He did just command a symbiote to do something after all. Eddie heads back to his apartment. He's frustrated with both the symbiote and the fact that they couldn't beat Gargan. He's frustrated. He's trying to be a good person, but as usual, things aren't working out for him. He hits his wall and some of his work falls off, forcing him to look at it in order to put it back up. He looks upon his greatest failure, the paper that got him fired. It serves as an analogy of how even though he had good intentions, he manipulated the Bugle by telling a falsified story because he thought it would make his career, and now he's doing the same with the symbiote, attempting to do good by controlling. It's here his father calls about the Oscorp interview, and Eddie tells him the truth about not getting the job. His dad is obviously disappointed, but Eddie, for the first time in his life, apologizes to his father and says one day he'll make him proud. The symbiote comes to Eddie and basically is like, yo dude, I'm not a good person, and I can tell that you are not happy with that. And Eddie's like, I'm not a very good person either. And it's here where we cut to the flashback of the accident at the beginning of the movie where the kid got hit by the car, and it turns out that Eddie Brock is not the kid. Eddie Brock was the driver. A young 21-year-old Eddie Brock gets out of the car and is stunned at what just happened. He didn't even see the kid. And as he explains this to the symbiote begins to understand now why he's so angry. He's not angry at his situation, he's angry at himself. It's here that Eddie comes to the realization that good people don't seek fame from noble actions. They do the right thing even if there's no reward, and even if they can't hold complete control in the situation. The symbiote doesn't seem to understand, but is forced to join Eddie as he goes out to find Scorpion, as they see on the TV that he's rampaging through the city, killing innocent people, which Eddie makes his true reasoning now. He messed up once, getting someone killed, but he can stop Gargan from messing this up and hurting someone else. The symbiote just makes it known that its only reasoning for being here is that Scorpion's obviously wearing a symbiote, and somehow they need to take it back. Venom heads out and finds Scorpion, where they clash once more. A short time into the savage fight, Venom pins Scorpion down where the symbiote tries to take control of Gargan's symbiote, but it refuses, having also gone insane. Through all of this, both Eddie and the symbiote get a look into Gargan's memories. Scorpion throws Venom into a nearby alleyway, and as the police begin shooting at Scorpion, they distract him. The symbiote is shocked. Gargan is just like him and Eddie. He immediately relates to him. This is the first person besides Eddie he's ever related to. He tells Eddie that they need to save Gargan from this corrupted offspring. He understands now that what Eddie was saying earlier about helping people, and sees now that there are others in this world, bad people who would seek to control the symbiote to do evil. It sees that Eddie just wants to become one with it so it can do good to make up for his past sins. So while their ideologies clash a bit, they both want the same thing: not to be alone and to protect the innocent. Eddie and the symbiote are finally on the same page, and they go out to fight to remove the evil symbiote from Gargan. The fight is crazy intense, and in a crazy epic climax to the fight, Venom manages to rip Gargan out of the suit and then proceeds to go absolutely crazy on the empty suit being controlled by the crazy symbiote. 100% going for the kill. The evil symbiote cowers and tries to escape when a foot steps on it. Norman Osborn's foot. Venom approaches him and gets close, telling him that he can't take that symbiote. He knows Osborn will only want to use it for evil. Osborn makes a snarky comment and tells Venom that he will continue to let him walk around like this, for he's interested to see where they can go, and would like to study their actions. Venom grimaces and tells Osborn that he will not have the time, because they're gonna take him down one way or another. Osborn says that he can't wait to see them try, and he contains the symbiote, taking it away. The symbiote asks Eddie why they don't just go after him, and Eddie says that they have to wait. They'll get him, they just need a better plan than fighting Osborn before they take him on. He is the owner of one of the world's biggest corporations after all. Fighting him here now in the public would do no good. It would just turn the public against him. Reporters flood over to Venom asking questions left and right, and he yells at all of them to quiet down, scaring them all silent. One reporter shakily steps forward and says the public just wants to know one thing: who is he? Venom steps forward and says,
"We are poison to the guilty, protector of the innocent. We are Venom."
Roll credits, baby. But there is an after credit scene, so get ready, boys and girls. Osborn watches the news as an Oscorp scientist runs into the room telling him it's ready. They've managed to merge the two samples. Osborn enters the room to see a blood-red symbiote smashing on the glass container it's held in. He simply smiles. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I want to do a really quick shout out to Jake the filmmaker, because he did the Venom voices for this video and I dug him a lot. So, big thank you to him for doing those. What did you guys think of the Venom rewrite? Do you want to see Venom 2, Venom 3? Let me know in the comments below what you liked, what you didn't like. Make sure to always check out the community tab of my channel, because we have big fun discussions over there, and I will start live streaming soon, because I guess that sounds interesting, and I like live streaming, so get ready for those as well. So turn on the notifications so you can always be updated of when I upload and when I start live streaming. And I will see you guys in the next video, and as always, stay nerdy.